The Flashpoint Paradox is maybe one of the most entertaining Elseworld Justice League stories that, technically speaking, isn't actually an Elseworld Justice League story. Let me explain. You see, the Flash wakes up in a world that's not as it once was. It's just as familiar as it is foreign to him. Sometimes the capes and the cowls stay the same, but the faces underneath change. And other times, the faces stay the same, but their personalities are not present. Some of these notable changes include, but are not limited to, Batman being a brutalizing Punisher who fights to end crime by literally fighting and ending criminals, Batman's dad being Batman, Batman's mom being the Joker, Harley Quinn going by the name Yo-Yo, Shazam now being several kids in a trench coat, Wonder Woman being the scorned mistress of Aquaman with the Atlanteans and Amazonians at war over their little lovers' quarrel, Aquaman's greatest enemies working underneath him to do his bidding, Lex Luthor and Deathstroke being part of a resistance against these ocean dwellers, Lois Lane being a reporter turned secret agent and infiltrating the Amazon, Superman crash landing in Metropolis instead of Smallville, being taken in by the government to be a lifelong prisoner/lab rat, Barry's wife being married to another man with whom she has a child with, and most notably, Barry's mother is still alive. Now, what's important to note about the Flash is that his mother's death plays a very big part in his origin, acting as the very inspiration for why he decided to try to make a difference in the world.
Accept the things you cannot change, have the courage to change the things you can, and have the wisdom to know the difference.
So with her demise never taking place, that means that neither did the rise of the Flash. Without her death, there is no birth of his alter ego. So Barry is both out of costume and out of powers, now trapped in a broken world that he's incapable of fixing. I've said before on multiple occasions that Batman is a protector, not a punisher. But I guess I probably should have been a little bit more specific, because this is the rare occasion where the exact opposite is true. So let me restate. Bruce Wayne is a protector and not a punisher. Thomas Wayne might give the Punisher a run for his money. This is a Batman that operates not out of hope, but strictly out of vengeance. He isn't trying to make the world a better place by saving lives. He's trying to take revenge on a world that took the most important life to him. A city which killed his son and corrupted his wife. Sure, he does the right things, but he does them for the wrong reasons. And his methods in doing right, well, quite frankly, are wrong. I think one aspect of this film that is constantly overlooked by fans and critics is the silent connection between this Elseworld Batman and the mainline Flash. They're complicated characters that are just as selfish as they are selfless. You see, they share the exact same goal. They want to manipulate the timeline in an effort to save a slain family member. Flash ran back in reverse time to undo his mother's death, which completely changed the universe in the process. It was a wrong that he tried to right, but it was a wrong that he tried to right because it was a wrong that affected him personally. I think Reverse Flash said it best. Now compare that to Thomas Wayne. The Batman from this changed timeline is desperate for Flash to reverse time and change things back to how they were.
You didn't stop JFK from getting a or make sure he stayed in art school. You saved your mommy, her hero. How noble.
Knowing full well that it will mean his own demise, which is all well and fine to him so long as it ensures the safety of his son. This elder Batman essentially sacrifices himself to save the someday Batman, but by doing this he's also giving up the entire world that he was a part of in the process, something that means very little to him in the grand scheme of things. Neither man think about how they could affect the world around them. Instead, they just see how they can fix the atrocities in their own lives. Like I said, that's just to name a few of the things going on here. To make it clear, this movie isn't handling its material with kid gloves. It deals with some pretty heavy and dark material, as the movie opens up on a young Barry finding the body of his mother after her murder. Batman breaks the Flash's fingers one by one because he believes that he's being lied to. Wonder Woman cuts off Mara's head after being caught sleeping with her husband. And then she later very willfully kills a kid. Yeah, this is pretty rough at times. Even just the depictions of the characters can be coarse here. This Batman is a deeply disturbed individual, more so than usual. Bruce and Thomas may share a bloodline and here a mantle, but they couldn't be any more different. Each Batman has a completely different way of doing things, and Thomas's is usually with alcohol followed by a lot of violence. This story is simple, but it's just as strong as it is strange. It is the definition of doing something new with something old, utilizing characters in ways audiences wouldn't expect you to. Even after getting acquainted with this version of events, I still couldn't predict where the plot would go next. I remember the first time I watched this, I was kinda assuming that Flash would somehow get transferred to this Earth, and then would somehow unite every member of this Justice League and then get himself back home. But apparently I've just been watching too many movies, because that is absolutely not what happens. I mean, there's like some threads of that starting to happen, but not really. The Flash does manage to make a team of this Batman and this universe's Cyborg, where they eventually free and get assistance from Superman, but they never come together as a team, nor do they stop the battle. Although, the one thing I really need to comment on is the way that this movie reveals the change. Spoiler alert. All of these events happen. At last minute, it's revealed to the audience that all of these changes occurred because the Flash ran back in time to save his mother. And look, I get what they're doing, the butterfly effect. Hey, you go to the past, you step on a butterfly, you change everything in the future. Totally get that. I'm okay with that. You don't have to explain how Flash saving his mom somehow changed all of this. You don't have to do it. I get it, okay? However, the fact that they never really show Flash doing this, they instead have Reverse Flash make a passing comment about Flash's dead family, then he runs toward the camera, and we see the title. I think that just kind of felt lame. I'm not saying it's a bad plot point, it's not bad for the story. I think the way it was set up was kind of underwhelming. It doesn't really come off as a big reveal. I think that was what it was meant to do, but instead it just kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere, and I don't know, I think good reveals in stories kind of leave breadcrumb trails for the audience to follow, instead of just randomly springing a story beat on them last minute. But that's just me. The movie boasts a pretty impressive cast that boosts the material that they're given to work with, including beloved returning actors reprising their famous roles. Career-long Caped Crusader Kevin Conroy is back as Batman, and of course he's just as great as he's ever been. A little underutilized given the story, I think he has all of 4 lines, but he makes the most of it. They're pretty memorable moments, actually. I would even say that one of his scenes is maybe the most memorable and sentimental moment that comes from this movie. Hynden Walsh, who played Harley Quinn on The Batman, plays her Elseworld self here too. Dana Delaney comes back as Lois Lane, a part that she's also played on The Batman and of course Superman the Animated Series. Surprisingly, Ron Perlman even acts as Deathstroke, just as he did in Teen Titans, though he seems to be going with a very different approach to the character this time around, sounding a lot less like his previous performance and a lot more like himself.
See for yourself.
Really? I think your skills are improving.
I thought you were supposed to be smart.
And while this marks Sam Daly's first time as Superman, here, the last son of Krypton is a mantle passed down from father to son, as his father, Tim Daly, got his start as Supes on Superman the Animated Series. Couple more casting choices of note. Nathan Fillion plays the Green Lantern here, and he would later go on to play the part in live action in the 2025 Superman movie. Though here he's playing Hal Jordan, whereas there he's playing Guy Gardner. That is a bowl cut that would make Mo jealous. Danny Huston plays General Lane, and this is before he'd go on to play generals in multiple live-action superhero movies, acting as Stryker in X-Men Origins, and Ludendorff in Wonder Woman. Jennifer Hale, who is a constant DC voice actor, was also chosen to play Iris West. Don't really have anything specific to mention about her performance, but I think her inclusion in this alone deserves a nod. There are also some pretty heavy hitters here otherwise. Somehow Michael B. Jordan plays Cyborg, and I think his voice really complements this character. Anytime I think of this character, I think of Kari Payton. And whenever it's another actor in this role, I find it to be really off-putting. But in this instance, I thought his voice fit especially well. Even more so considering that this is a slightly more mature version of this hero, both numerically and mentally. Cary Ells is one of my all-time favorite actors, so I really enjoyed hearing him involved in a project from one of my favorite brands. He does well with what he's given to do, but that isn't all that much. Because while Aquaman does play a major role in the story, he's given minimal screen time. But to be fair, there's a lot going on in this one. C. Thomas Howell is so naturally eerie as Reverse Flash. Seriously, this is without a doubt my favorite interpretation of this character. I mean, don't get me wrong, I liked him on The Flash show, you know, all 85 versions of him, But this right here is the most effortlessly cocky and creepy version of this character I've ever seen. And while I could have used a little bit more of everybody, I think it's criminal that we got so little of him. Kevin McKidd plays a very different version of Batman. Literally, as I've mentioned before, this time around, it's Thomas Wayne under the cowl instead of Bruce. But we'll get to that performance in a little bit. The cast is absolutely iconic. These are quality performances. But the work that they're given to do isn't always of the same quality. I know that this is like blasphemy and sacrilege amongst DC fans, but hear me out. Because I feel like the dialogue in this one can be a little bit too on the nose.
If I just ran a little faster, I'd have been there.
Barry, you were just a boy. There was nothing you could have done.
If I'd been there, maybe I could have stopped it.
Come on now. It's not great. And I'm not entirely sure why that is. Because this very line of films would put out projects with much better banter and exposition. I think if we're speaking solely about the speaking, this is legitimately worse than future installments would be. Not narrative-wise, but talking-wise, the talking is not wise. I really appreciate the story that's being told here, but I don't exactly love the words that they're using to tell it. Whenever I think of Flashpoint, I'm reminded of that one Oni Plays episode where they bring up this story.
Did I ever tell you about that movie, The Flashpoint Paradox? But one time, this complete said, yo, those DC cartoon movies are actually really good. And by chance, at the time, a girl was coming over. Oh no, I told her, I was like, hey, this guy told me that this movie's really good, you wanna watch it? She was like, okay. And then we both sat down, we started watching it. It's like the worst dialogue I've ever. And then I was like, oh my god, this is actually bad. This is actually bad.
And I can kind of relate to this. Not just because I'm eagerly awaiting an email asking me to play a small part in Smiling Friends. Not just because of that. It wouldn't just be because of that. I mean, it is partially because of that, but it's not entirely because of that. I really did have a similar experience with this movie. Except I wasn't the guy who's being shown the movie. I was the idiot showing this movie. At the time, I was kind of psyched about the very concept of it. So when it was released, I was so enamored because it was so different from anything I'd see DC do at this point in time. I was so blinded by the mere idea of this story that I decided to show it off to a couple friends who weren't exactly superhero fans. And when I sat down to watch it with them, the cringeworthy conversations took center stage. And shortly after I put it on for company, I was taking it right back off. I think that stuff is a little bit more tolerable when you're already a fan and you're currently being serviced. But if you're going into this with fresh eyes and ears, it can come off as kind of goofy at times. And that's in spite of its pretty brutal nature. But just because speaking isn't its strong suit, doesn't mean that it's all around bad. Because visually, it's very impressive. And I'm not just talking about the character models or the animation, the actual action is always on point. Showcasing some impressive fight scenes, but more importantly, full-on battles. As a matter of fact, I would even say that it's these grand-scale sparring sessions, as well as the scenarios that surround them, that completely sell this movie. Very often these battlefields are the host of a shocking amount of demise. A lot of our heroes and our heroes-turned-villain meet their end mid-fight. Some in pretty barbaric ways, that I probably can't show on certain platforms. These fight scenes also see most of the story's twists and turns. And without going out of my way to spoil all of it, they are plentiful and potent. These are swerves of both quantity and quality. But seriously, a lot of quantity. Betrayals, befriendings, beheadings. These battles have them all. Lots and lots of unalivings. Men, women, children, they're all fair game in war. Now, I'm not trying to say that there isn't anything deeper than the surface. But really, for the most part, the surface is the sell. But despite that, the movie has moments that I would argue are unrivaled by any other Justice League movie. Okay, now, spoiler alert here. The ending of this movie sees the Flash return to his own timeline, giving Bruce a letter from his father from another Earth, almost acting as a carrier pigeon between bats. It's a short but touching scene where we see Batman really break character, and for a brief time, become Bruce Wayne the person, as opposed to Bruce Wayne the persona. It's one of the rare, openly vulnerable moments we get of this character. And I'm not even talking about this version of the character, I'm talking about this character. As a standalone animated movie, I think for the most part it works well for what it is. It's definitely iconic in its own right. If somebody told me that they loved this movie, I would understand where they were coming from. If somebody told me that they hated this movie, I would also understand where they're coming from. But as the start of an animated movie universe, this feels considerably more disconnected from everything that comes after it. And I'm not just talking in terms of quality, I'm talking in general. It just doesn't feel like it has a lot to do with what comes next. I think I've waited so long to talk about this Justice League movie because I'm gonna get flack for my opinion one way or another, and people are gonna think that I'm hating on this movie, but I have real mixed feelings about it. It has always frustrated me because as much as I love it conceptually, and sometimes in execution, it kind of feels like it teeter-totters. The premise is promising, but I don't think it always lives up to its potential. I feel like I would have really liked if more was done with it in some areas, and sometimes I feel like I wish a little bit less was done in others. Overall, regardless, it is an important piece of DC history, being the first in a long line of films that acts as a sort of small screen Big Bang. At times, this is a good movie, and at times, this is actually almost a great movie. But also at times, it could be a little bit much. I hope I don't sound too overly critical here, I'm sure that I do, because again, I do like this, but I don't exactly love it. I just want to acknowledge that this in some ways could be lesser than its follow-ups. And you know what? Good. That's the way things are supposed to work. They're supposed to get better with time, not worse, hopefully. So, if you needed a low point in your ongoing franchise, the beginning is actually a good thing. With all that being said, if you like this video and would maybe want to see me explore future installments in the series, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
Just Us League?
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.